tomorrow before we begin to talk about it. But of course, the PIB has been signed to law. We can sketch around today. But why I agreed to speak to you today is not just to speak about the PIB. It's to actually speak about our stewardship in the Ministry of Petroleum so far. A few days from today will be 2 years exactly to the date in this office. And when we started in 2019, the President handed down 9 mandate areas. So far, I can tell you without fear or favor that we have ticked all the boxes, from eradicating cross-border smuggling or PMS, the completing the gas flare commercialization and LPG penetration, increase the crude oil production, reduce cost of oil production by at least 5%, facilitate the passage of the PIB, implement the Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Act, work with private sector to increase domestic refinery, and of course collaborate with private sector to create a large number of high-paying jobs. We've ticked all the boxes. That doesn't mean that it is time to rest on our oars. We believe that now it is time to do the job, to clean up and to deliver legacies that will outlive this administration. So we are talking about AKK, which is already ongoing, the Ajaokuta, Abuja, Kano gas pipeline, which is ongoing. We are talking about Train 7, which is a major project which FID was taking at the most challenging time. We are talking about the 2020 marginal field bid round. Of course, we have also delivered on the PIB. And then, of course, you can talk about sundry issues like the TSA, which is a major milestone in our anti-corruption war as an administration, and our efforts with Boko Haram and so on. But I would not want to go deep into the PIB. I don't want this forum to be solely about the PIB, because if we begin to delve into it, I might be preempting Mr. President, who will be speaking on the same matter tomorrow. I just thought I should set these ground rules so that we can be on the same page. Having said that, I will leave the floor to you, gentlemen of the press, to fire your salvos. For us in the Niger Delta, I asked them, 3% of something, is that not better than 100% of what you don't know? What we want to achieve, the philosophy behind this bill, is to attract investors to Nigeria, to produce as much of this crude in the ground as possible. Now, that is what we want to achieve. So, we must measure everything against this philosophy. So, as the Niger Delta, if activities are not going on, because investors look at the numbers and the numbers don't add up, because when you say 3%, or you say 5%, or you say 100%, where will the investors charge it to? Are they going to charge it to their profit or to the operational cost? These charges all go to the operational cost. And today we already have a lot going in there. You have the 3% to NDDC. You have 1% to TED Fund. You have another percentage to NCDMB. All that goes into the production cost and hikes the production cost. So you have a situation where the production cost is going up. So you must be very mindful of heaping up more cost on that operational cost. Now this 3% will also go on top of everything that is being deducted from the operational cost, from the operational side. So where do you want to get the benefit from? You take it from the operational side, you will see the effect of it on the profit. Because you have already taken it from the operational cost. Your operational costs go up, your profits will reduce. So it's just a matter of cutting your nose to spite your face. So now if because of that, investors say, okay, look, the operational cost in this territory is too high, so we can't go there. There are too many deductions, and there's too many things to be deducted, so we won't come. Then there will be no investment. Then you can have 100%, and there is nothing to get, because there is no investment. Now that is one part of the story. Now the other side is also that sorry, I just yeah, you know, the other part of it is that the Frontier Exploration Fund, I always say, those who are talking about frontier exploration, what is what do we want? What is frontier exploration in the first instance? Frontier exploration are areas where we have prospects, but we've not been able to find oil. And everybody, every frontier territory is aspiring to be a host community, isn't it? Because you go to the frontier territory, you look for oil. When you find oil, that frontier territory becomes a host community. And the frontier territories are not only in one area of the country. There are frontier territories in Cross River State, frontier territories in the northeast, frontier territories in the southwest. So when people just locate frontier territory in one part of the country and say, oh, it is only in the north, then it is not so. So we must come together as a country, frontier and host communities. And for host communities, you must realize that in the end, it's about the philosophy is to bring investments to this territory, where investors have not been for a long time, because there has been no new investment for a long time. Look at where we are. We've had about 37 billion barrels reserve. For the past 10 years, we have not added to our reserves. And our production, which was going towards almost 3 million, started even going down at some point until we started doing some work here. So we need to bring some vigor into this industry. We cannot go back to where we are coming from. Let's look forward as a country. We cannot just be parochial. We cannot say, okay, this part of this country or this part of we must look at Nigeria first. Who is the one that is gaining? And I think in this case, it is Nigeria. AKK is going on very well. There is no problem with AKK. We are still very much on course, and the construction process is ongoing. I don't know if we would even like to have the opportunity of inspecting, but AKK is very much on course. There's no problem with AKK. That's all I can say. I cannot tell you exactly where they are now, because as we speak, they are moving. So if I tell you they are already at Kaduna, they would have probably gone past Kaduna by now. But we are taking the construction from two ends, one from the Kaduna end going all the way to Kano, and the other from the Ajaokuta end going all the way down to Kaduna. And I can tell you that we are still very much on course to meet our deadline. Modular refineries, we've licensed quite a bit. I'm not in a position to give you an exact figure now, but I know that a few of these refineries are under construction, and very soon we'll be commissioning at least 3 new modular refineries. You know that just last year we commissioned the one in the Walter Smith one, which is functioning very well. And since then, I've also laid foundation stone for Atlantic refinery. And there is the Niger Delta one that is also ongoing, almost ready to be commissioned in Port Harcourt and so on. So there are quite a few modular refineries that are ongoing. So that program is on course.
Is that producing
Well, it depends. The Walter Smith one is 5,000 barrels a day, and they are producing. They are producing very comfortably. There is no problem at all. The Atlantic one is not finished, but they too, I mean, they are very well, very much on course to conclude, to finish construction by first quarter next year. And there are other modular refinery projects that are ongoing now. You asked about the meeting with Labour on petrol price, whether that meeting is still on course. It is on course. I told you, the issue is not just about discussing with Labour, because we've agreed between Labour and us that we need to put a framework in place for the implementation of deregulation. Because more or less, there is consensus across the table now that deregulation is desirable. But how do we achieve it? That is the question now. And the Labour and us have agreed. So we are now in the process of putting the infrastructure and the process in place. And once we are able to agree on that process with Labour, then we are ready to deregulate. So we'll keep it here at 162 in that band now, within that band for the time being. But we are in the time also at the moment trying to work out the processes to allow the deregulation to come to fruition. Because right now we don't even have a choice anymore. It is a matter of law. So we have to ensure that this happens. But we have to ensure that also the ordinary Nigerian is well catered for before it is that law is actually operated.
Sir, do you have a timeline in place for this?
I cannot give you a timeline now, but it's not going to be too far from now. We've done quite a lot of work, extensive work. The Vice President is actually leading that process, and we've done extensive work, but I cannot now give you a timeline, because we're also talking about the other option is to give you the alternative fuel as well, which is gas. We're also working on that. That has gone quite far. You know, the President already launched the auto gas program in December last year. So that is also ongoing, and we will put everything together at the end, and then we'll come back to you. OPEC Secretary General, yes, I had very interesting discussions with the OPEC Secretary General, who happens to be a very illustrious Nigerian, a very patriotic Nigerian also, who also knows that there is a need for us to increase our production. But of course, there are processes in OPEC to increase your quota. So yes, the discussions have started, but those processes cannot be circumvented. Even if you have your person as Secretary General, you cannot circumvent those processes. So I can assure you that we are still working now, and we will soon get to that point where we can at least have some improvement. But that will also depend on the performance of the global market situation, which for now is beginning to improve. And we are hoping that we'll be able to have some improvement in our production quota. And of course, pursue our target of increasing our production to 3 million barrels very vigorously. Of course, they are. Because in the end, who is subsidizing who? Crude oil cargoes are ring-fenced in order to import products so that we can burn those products in our cars at a subsidized rate. Now, in the end, that cost is being borne by the Federation. So governors are getting less and less. That's what I was saying. If you talk about the 3%, you can either take it from this side or you take it from the profit side. So when you're enjoying it in your cars, you're burning the money in the subsidy. You do not realize that if you didn't have subsidy, you will still probably even have more at the other end available to you. But we burn it at this end via subsidy. And then when it comes to the other profit end, there is less money, because there are less cargoes to be sold to fund the Federation account. So the governors have realized that in the end they are just cutting their noses to spite their face with subsidy. Because one way or the other you are paying for it. You are subsidizing, and you are taking all this money on this side, burning it. And then they've just realized if they didn't subsidize, then these cargoes will be available and sold and shared as part of the Federation revenue. I believe that that must have been what has informed their decision to start clamoring for deregulation. Because in the end, it pays everybody better. And that's what I was saying about also the 3%. You take this money on this side, on the operational side, it's a lot of money, but you take less now on the profit side. On top of that, companies can now decide to say, look, because the operational cost is becoming too high, we don't want to come and invest in this territory. So if less companies come to invest, you have less revenue on the other side. So and you have less and less of everything. So this is a balancing act. We must realize that in many cases, we are just cutting our noses to spite our faces. Because you take it from this side, either on the side of subsidy or on the side of the 3%. And the 3% is charged to the operational cost. Nobody is going to charge the 3% to their profit now, you know. So they will charge it to the operational cost. And the operational cost will continue to rise. And then, of course, your profits will then continue to decline. And then you will be complaining that you have less profit on this side to share. But meanwhile, you didn't realize that you've already taken the money on the operational side. So it's a balancing act. But I think that at least we've been very fair to the host communities as well. And let them just take it. This amounts to quite a lot, even the 3%. It amounts to quite a lot, as they will see. Fortunately for us, this is the only fund that is targeted at the host communities in this country. Because all other such funds were not really targeted at the host community. NDDC, for example, was actually established for this purpose as well, to douse the tension in the producing areas. But today, NDDC is not targeting those host communities, because sometimes the expenditure, where NDDC is spending the money, is different from where the problem is happening. So the host communities continue to clamor. You have the 13% derivation, which was also instituted to douse this problem. And many times, this 13% is not targeted at the host communities. So the 13% may be spent somewhere, and the problem is happening somewhere else. So this is the first fund that is targeting the host communities. And the management of this fund involves also the oil companies, who know where the shoe is pinching. So I believe that the coming together of community and oil companies and government will, for the first time, really address this problem of host community development.